Welcome back to the Warrior Servant Leader podcast, where we talk about real leadership, real stories, and solutions. And as always, no excuses are allowed. Today, we have an awesome guest who's going to talk about a topic that a lot of people are probably afraid to talk about. And we're going to dive into it. We're going to dive into his book and get his story because it is one of encouragement. So today's guest is Bain. He's an author, a chronic condition advocate, a neurofeedback specialist, and counseling student working on his master's degree, whose life changed overnight during his senior year of college when a sudden injury led to post-concussion syndrome. After years of chronic pain, medical dismissal, and we're going to talk about that, and navigating an invisible disability, he turned that experience into his new book, Chronic Pain Warrior. And it is a practical and compassionate guide for anyone facing chronic pain, illness, or injury. Davis is passionate about helping chronic pain warriors and their loved ones feel seen, understood, and less alone. Davis, man, welcome to Warrior Servant Leader podcast. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Pat, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
All right, let's dive in because I got a ton I want to cover with you. But you're a young guy. How old are you now? I think
I'm 25.
25. All right. Give us a little of the background, life before the injury, and what that injury, entailed. Because I had a TBI. We talked offline. I had a TBI when I was in second grade. But not to the chronic condition you ended up finding yourself in. But what was life before the injury?
Well, just to your point, every TBI is very different. So it's not like a broken knee or a broken bone. It's every single TBI is different. It impacts the central nervous system, which regulates every function of the body. And so every TBI, every concussion is different and impacts people differently. So two people could have the same level of hit. Two people could both play in the NFL and get their head rocked week after week after week and have completely different effects afterwards. And so it's all case by case, and it totally depends on the person. But a little bit about me before my injury. I was a mechanical engineering student at the University of Minnesota, which kept me very busy. I was also an Air Force ROTC cadet, so I was pursuing a commission in the Air Force, and then my last year I was selected for a slot in the Space Force, which was the newest military branch, and so I was excited about that. I was excited to be a leader. I was looking forward to trying to impact other people positively with my leadership. I was trying everything I could to develop myself as a person, as a leader, as a member of the military that I was pursuing. And my lifestyle was pretty high paced, high octane, pretty fast. I was busy with schoolwork all the time. And if I wasn't doing that, I was doing Air Force ROTC commitments, PT, lead lab, various different other volunteering and extracurricular commitments. I was very involved in my campus ministry, the Salt Company, and very involved in my local church when I was going to school. And so I was always busy. I was seeing people all the time, and I was performing at a pretty high level. My senior year in October, so it was October of 22, I suffered a head injury at PT from a soccer ball that led to post-concussion syndrome. And I quickly saw all of my capacity, my ability to contribute, my ability to put forth work and engage in the world as I had before for basically my entire life crumble and fall away from me. And I all of a sudden had much less capacity, debilitating symptoms every day, and everything was just so much harder.
Wow. So ended the military career aspirations? Wow.
Yeah, so not right away. It was 6 months of not knowing if I was going to be able to recover or not knowing if I was going to commission or not. Knowing that was a path right in front of me, I continued to pursue it. I continued to participate in all activities as much as I could. But it was kind of this looming deadline that at 6 months, if you're not better, you're given the boot. And so I tried everything I could in that 6 months to get better. I tried to get myself to a point where I could ethically and honorably commission, but I realized I was not at a point of health where I'd be able to be an effective leader, perform well in a military environment, and I would be a disservice to anyone who I was serving with. And so um, I chose to be honest about where I was, be honest about how I was doing, and was given the medical discharge at 6 months.
Wow. So did you graduate your senior year though and get your engineering degree?
I did, yeah, barely.
Yeah.
Tooth and nail. It was really hard to focus and do homework and think in that kind of logical, like very analytical mindset that an engineer has to with my brain injury, but I barely was able to, yes.
Wow. So what are some of the after effects? Like I know I have tinnitus, and we're going to talk about that because 85% of all disabilities are invisible under what qualifies under the Americans with Disabilities Act are invisible. So it's difficult, I think, for the person with a disability to function and try to. And I don't know if this is your case. I never told anybody I had tinnitus because it wasn't, even when I was a cop, it was never brought up. There wasn't a hearing test or anything, kind of deal. And it's like, I can fully function as a police officer. It's just, I have ringing in my ears all the time. What are some of the things that you've struggled with, since the injury that are of that invisible nature?
Mm-hmm. Almost everything has been invisible, and there's a lot of conditions that are just invisible by nature. I think of people with chronic Lyme's or long COVID or some of these chronic illnesses that are out there, and you just can't see it. So for me, it's like I can move, I can function, I can walk, I can talk to you. There's nothing on the outside that would make you realize that I'm having symptoms right now. But on the inside right now, I have brain fog. I feel a headache. I don't feel quite like myself. And these are just kind of the day-to-day symptoms that I have all the time. And so I've gotten used to it, but the symptoms are very much there. And the worst of my symptoms, I think, is brain fog, headache, and emotional dysregulation. So brain fog, I'll walk around and like look at the world, but it's almost like I'm wearing sunglasses indoors. Is kind of what it feels like, where you can't quite see everything right. I'll look at a beautiful sunset and it won't emotionally impact me like, wow, that's beautiful. It's kind of like, oh, there's a sunset there. When I try to think, sometimes my mind just feels empty. I feel slow. I feel dumb sometimes. And I don't call myself dumb. I'm not, sitting in that negative self-talk kind of a pattern. But overall, brain fog, headache, and emotional dysregulation have been the worst.
Sometimes you feel like you got to punch a hole in the wall, huh?
Sometimes, yes. And sometimes I feel absolutely nothing when I should be feeling things. Kind of all over the place.
So what's the prognosis for you?
Prognosis for post-concussion syndrome.
Because you talk about medical dismissal in your book and in your experience. So, so I'm sorry I cut you off, but prognosis.
So the diagnosis is post-concussion syndrome. And really all that diagnosis is, and almost any syndrome is like this. Syndrome can translate to, we see a pattern, but we don't know why it happens. So for post-concussion syndrome, it's literally the doctor looking at me and saying, you still have symptoms beyond, the mark is 3 months. You still have symptoms beyond 3 months. Therefore, you have post-concussion syndrome. There's no testing that could prove how bad my case is. There's no imaging that could show it. It's all these little micro damages to neurons and axons and small structures in the brain that cause this. And there's no way to detect it. Every test comes back normal. And so it's purely symptom-based. And so there isn't really a good prognosis. I could have this the rest of my life, very realistically. Or I could steadily make progress and eventually feel at a point where it doesn't impact me that much. But at this point, it's been 3.5 years. I've found some things that have been somewhat helpful. But on the whole, I still feel chronic post-concussion syndrome symptoms on a daily basis all the time. And it's anywhere from annoying to debilitating.
Wow. So how did all this work out into the book that you wrote? And and I'm just going to come right out and ask it. Is that why you're getting a counseling, advanced degree in counseling, because of what you've experienced over the last 3.5 years?
100%. I mean, it's pretty plain and simple, like you said. The book came out of a desire to help people using my story. I found that reading other people's books, like accounts of suffering, particularly a couple books that come to mind are Unbroken by Laura Hillenbrand. It's a story of Louise Zamperini, I think, and also Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. Both of those books were stories of immense struggle and pain and perseverance amidst suffering that were super helpful for me. And so I kind of had it in the back of my mind that I wanted to write a book, but I didn't feel ready. I didn't feel qualified. I wanted to have some qualifications behind my name to, some letters behind my name to make me feel like I'm ready to write a book or feel like an expert. But I realized that lived experience is plenty of qualifier to try and help other people. And I felt so alone throughout the journey that I just wanted to do whatever I could to help. And I figured if telling my story and giving a few pieces of advice and discussion could help someone else, then I ought to do it.
Absolutely. I mean, experience trumps book knowledge any day of the week. So tell us a little bit about how faith has been a part of this journey, and what are some of the lessons you've learned from that faith perspective, not just the physical, what works and what doesn't work as far as your symptoms go.
Yeah, faith has been a huge component. I love Jesus and I seek to serve him every second of every day. And that has only strengthened in the long term through my condition and my suffering and my health struggles. But it has also challenged my faith in many ways that I did not see coming. And I've had to really dive into the Bible. I've had to really dive into theology to try and reconcile my experience and what I was going through with these kind of theological concepts and knowledge that were in the back of my head. So I've bounced around to a bunch of different churches trying to find a church that would have patience for me, that would meet me where I was, that would support me practically, and would teach me helpful theology for my suffering and for what I was going through. And so I will say that I've wrestled with my faith a lot. I've had a lot of doubts. I've had a lot of times where I didn't know what to believe and was just mad at God. I've spent a lot of time in prayers that were kind of ugly and prayers that you wouldn't, pray in front of other people or put in a book, or the kind of prayer that, you're driving around late at night and just almost yelling at God because life is so hard. And
Yeah.
you know he can help, but you're not seeing it. And so I think, go ahead.
Oh yeah. And what first comes to mind is hearing your story is, man, on the one hand, you want to be David, and that warrior servant leader, leading from the front and all that. And at the same time, you get literally whacked upside the head, and you are now more in the book of Job than you are in Psalms, or that kind of experience. How have you? I'll just come right out and ask it. Have you landed somewhere in a church environment that is what you're looking for, or are you still kind of in that search mode?
Since I moved out here to Colorado, I'm from Minnesota, just moved out here to Colorado to pursue grad school. I moved out here in January, so it's been 4 months now. And since I've been out here, I have found a beautiful church that I absolutely love. And no church is perfect. There's little nitpicky things I could find, and I'll find that with any church I go to. But on the overall, it has been an immensely encouraging community that has helped my theology, that has helped my knowledge of God, that has helped my knowledge of the scriptures. They have prayed for me, practically encouraged me, helped me, walked with me along good days and bad days, and been an incredible community and resource for me. So, yes, I am so grateful to say that I found a church that I like, but I should also say that I've probably tried somewhere in the range of 8 in the last like 2 years. So I've bounced around quite a bit.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's our faith is called a journey for a reason. It's
Yeah.
yeah. You kind of remind me in a way. Your story in a way is Paul, and previously known as Saul, and he even in his writings he would occasionally lament about, and we don't know what it actually was, but that he had a physical pain in his side, if you want to call it that, that he suffered, I think, physically. I've heard some evangelists and other theologians say that it was he never fully regained his sight after his trip on to Damascus, and he lamented about that a couple times in Scripture, but all that was superseded by his faith, and that all things, Christ is the ultimate, regardless of what your physical conditions might be.
Yeah. And in that example, Paul pleaded with God 3 times to take it away. And so I don't think for a Christian who's suffering, I don't think there's anything wrong. And I encourage Christians who are going through physical pain, suffering, chronic condition to plead with God to take it away.
Yeah, and there's
Paul did, and God might do it. He might take it away, and it does not hurt to ask. In fact, it's a beautiful thing to make your request made known to God. God, I want this. God, please take it away.
Yeah,
it's a great prayer. But the
it is.
belief that, but the belief that God definitely will take it away, I think, is where people fall into a little bit of a trap. Because if I believe based on a limited amount of scripture passages taken out of context, or talking to my pastor, or going to a certain church that's really big on healings, I might believe that God will definitely take this away. And then if it doesn't happen, then it's on me. I'm not praying enough. I'm not doing enough. I'm not being obedient enough. My sin is stopping God from healing me, or whatever sort of lie and argument you want to make up in your head as to why you're not being healed. But the doctrine of God's sovereignty over everything, being able to heal, but yet having the ability to not heal and still be a faithful God, I think is the place where I've come to, and it's brought so much peace. And so when Paul is asking God, please take it away, and he doesn't, God's answer is, my grace is sufficient for you, and my power is made perfect in weakness. Basically saying that God will provide undue favor to Paul amidst all of his trials, amidst everything he's going through. That's what grace is. Grace is undue favor. So God will provide undue favor to Paul, and that is sufficient for him. That's all he needs. And that his power is made perfect in weakness. So Paul's weakness, his thorn in the flesh, presents him an opportunity for God's power to be made perfect in his life. And I think for Paul to remain faithful in that situation is an immense inspiration for all of us who are suffering.
Yeah, man, that was probably one of the greatest explanations I've heard about grace. I'm not big on acronyms, but I never understood, what grace. I never got a definition that made any sense to me until, man, it's probably only been 10, 12 years ago. And I don't even remember where I heard this or where I read it, but that grace, if you spell it out, GRACE, it stands for God's rewards at Christ's expense. And that really then triggered for me the understanding that I don't deserve anything. Every good thing that comes my way is God's reward granted at Christ's expense on the cross. And that is humbling, but it's also extremely encouraging to know, as opposed to if you were raised in a really toxic, dysfunctional family. I had a guest on, Steve Gallegos, several months ago. Also, a guy he's up in Denver, up near you, and immigrant family, came to the United States when he was 7. Never spoke a word of English before that, and his parents never called him by his God-given birth name that they gave him. They just called him good for nothing. Hey, good for nothing, come here, or you're good for nothing. Yeah, he grew up that way, and what that did to his psyche and emotional well-being and all that kind of stuff was so negative that. But then I understand the flip side of, no matter how jacked up I can be, or messed up I can be, or whatever, that God's rewards at Christ's expense, that grace is always there being offered to me. And I think, again, as you describe that, I go straight back to Job, is that his 3 buddies, hey, what'd you do to deserve this? Or why, just admit X, Y, or Z, and that this is punishment for something you did. And Job, he didn't fall for that. And I just think the final conclusion he came to is, God is God and I am not, and that should be enough. So that's how I picture you as you're going through this. God is God, you're not, and for whatever reason, and it's not, you're not, you don't have your own kids, but having 5 kids of our own and a couple grandkids, I can relate to a parent going, I don't care how much you plead with me to buy you that new bicycle or whatever. I know for reasons you don't understand why that's not going to happen. And it may happen down the road, or it may never happen. But I understand things you don't understand and may never understand. And I kind of picture God when it comes to prayer, the same thing. Like, what's, the Lord's Prayer, what's it say? Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And yet, once you accept that God's will only has the best for you in mind, even though you don't understand how struggle or tragedy or injury or illness, how could that possibly be good for me? Well, it can be if you're looking for the good in it. And I think that's where, as I hear you tell your story, I think that's where you're at in your journey, is you are looking for the good in your journey, which spurred the book, your master's degree journey. Notwithstanding all that, what has been the biggest difficulty for you in, I don't want to say accepting or resigning yourself to your physical disability, but in having your whole world altered, at the age of 21, 22, what's been the most difficult part of that impact?
On faith or on life in general?
Life in general, to start, because a lot of our listeners may not necessarily be a person of faith, but just, how could you not be? I'm going to put it in a little different context. Our youngest son died serving overseas in the Air Force with security forces 11 years ago. And only because of faith have we been able to navigate that journey. If I was not a person of faith in just the general life, that lazy river, it is what it is kind of, mindset, I think I'd be just totally crushed.
Yeah. I'm sorry to hear that.
Well, thank you. So that was my Debbie Downer moment. I did. I guess I don't know, kind of the daily big obstacle, and then what are you doing? What are the actual habits or routines and stuff that you have developed that help you navigate today and not worry about tomorrow and not blame the past?
Yeah. So I think one of the hardest things is not having ability to contribute. Genuinely, my ability to contribute to other people, to whatever work I'm doing, to provide for myself and help provide for others has been largely taken away. And I don't want to say that entirely because right now I have a part-time job and I'm able to do it. Praise God. And it's a miracle. And I don't know how I'm able to do it, but I'm able to do it. And that's like the first job in 3.5 years that's been that way. But for the most part, over 3.5 years, I have not been able to contribute nearly as much. And I think that for me, I want to be a servant of others, which is an active role. I want to serve my church. I want to serve my friends and my family. I want to serve the people around me. I want to find needs and fill them as much as I can and try to help other people who are in need. I want to put in good work to honor whoever I'm working for, to provide for myself, to provide for other people, to use money as a way to bless others. And that I haven't had that. And this is how I was before the injury, and this is still how I am now, my desires and what I want to do with my life. But when I can't work, when I can't go volunteer like I normally could, when I can't go to some event that's going to cause me a bunch of overstimulation and symptoms, where I'd love to be supporting someone, but I can't, it's really hard. And I don't know how you feel, but for me, it's part of kind of my masculine identity that I want to be someone that serves, protects, cares for, loves, and has high integrity. And when I can't do the serve and the active love component, it's been a really hard thing to come to grips with. And I've had to really humble myself that I'm not going to have the opportunities I did before. And the opportunities going forward are going to look different. And I ought to make the most of whatever opportunities I do have and capitalize on those instead of sitting around and moping and making excuses and being mad at the world for not having the opportunities I used to have.
Wow. So counseling program. So is that a 2-year kind of endeavor journey you're on there?
So I decided to pursue a master's in counseling probably a year ago, maybe a year and a half. And the thought was that I observed a correlation between my own mental health struggles, depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation, obsessive compulsive tendencies. Kind of after my injury, I felt all of it. Different times at different days, different seasons of life, but I've gone through a lot mental health wise. And I saw a correlation there between physical health. So on a bad day, I'd have, like on a bad day of physical health, I'd have bad symptoms, mental health. And there was a clear correlation where my anxiety would be up when my brain fog was up, and my depression would be up when my headaches were up. And not necessarily that kind of perfect one-to-one correlation, but there was a deep connection between the dysregulation of my central nervous system, my brain, the damage, and my mental health. And I was depressed, anxious for a long time, and still wrestle with that to a degree, but it's a lot better than it used to be. And for a good 4 months, I was experiencing pretty vivid, intense suicidal ideations that made it really tough to want to be alive. I'll tell you that. And I wanted to enter the space of chronic pain and mental health because I couldn't find one myself. And there are counselors out there who are doing that have experience with chronic pain, but they're not available for counseling sessions. There's only a handful from my research. And so I wanted to go bridge that gap. I wanted to provide good, solid mental health care for people who are going through chronic illness, injury, and pain. And I wanted to basically walk with them side by side and be a practical help for them as much as I could from the mental health space.
Well, so I don't know what other term to use than this. Do you have a battle buddy that you can rely on or that you can turn to? So
I have had like one dedicated person in the past, but now I have, yes, I do. I have not only really good friends around me that on a rough day when I'm not feeling like myself and I can't trust myself, I can call. But also I have really taken the time and effort to bring my family into what I'm going through. It's been cool as I've written this book and they've read it. They've gotten to know my experiences better, and so they've been able to meet me where I'm at and help support me better. And so I have amazing friends and family that I have seen that I can trust because I've given them opportunities to be trusted, and I've observed that they've handled that well and that I can trust them going forward. And so I've built myself quite the network. If I ever fall back, they'll catch me for sure.
Well, let's go down that trail a little bit deeper, because I know for so many people who are neurodiverse that have those unseen disabilities, whatever it might be, from autism spectrum to ADD, just all different things that it's uncomfortable for a person with a disability to talk about it, and then it's equally or even maybe even more uncomfortable, or at least awkward, for those in your circle to talk to you about what's going on, and they genuinely would like to help, but they don't know what to do or what to say or what to ask, and they don't want to do or say something that's going to trigger a negative response in you or whatever. So in what I'm calling a battle buddy, but what's your advice or actual steps people can take that are on the outside, that they're that family member, they are that friend you had pre-injury that now is like, oh, I don't know what to do or say, so they start ghosting you, or those kinds of things. How can people address that? How can they get over that hurdle, because it's not healthy to try and navigate this by yourself?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I've had a lot of friends and family who have said this to me, but also I've felt it for friends of mine that are going through really difficult challenges and I don't know how to help, where I felt such a grief for what they were going through, and yet I felt so helpless to actually provide anything for them that I just chose inaction. And I wouldn't reach out, I wouldn't ask what I can do, I wouldn't inquire further. I felt almost paralyzed by fear that I would somehow mess them up further, and I didn't want to. And I felt this kind of existential helplessness that ended up in my inaction, when I think I had a real opportunity to support and a real opportunity to help that I missed. And so what I tell people that are trying to support but don't know what to do, action is better than inaction. And no matter what you try and do, even if it's harmful. So say, Pat, you're going through something hard. I try to help as a friend and it is not supportive. And you tell me that, and whatever, it creates a little bit of momentary strain. I would argue that my effort and my attempt to help still means something. It still shows my love and my care, and that I'm involved and interested and want to help in the future, even if what I try and do doesn't work. Another thing is listen. Just ask open-ended questions. Don't ask the type of questions that almost have a guaranteed answer. So if, Pat, you told me you were feeling good last week, I'll be like, you still feeling good?
Yeah.
And like that type of question is shallow. It's not going to let you answer. If you're not doing well, you're going to feel pressured to answer that you are. And so you want to ask open-ended questions like, what was it like for you? Like how are your symptoms today? Or what was it like for you on a bad day last week? What is it like for you on a good day? What is it like for you to try and go to work? What is it like for you to try and go out with your friends? What are your symptoms? What does it feel like to experience this on a daily basis? How's your mental health? Where are you at?
Yeah.
What have you been experiencing? Open-ended questions to really get to the bottom. And then from there, once you have an established relationship, asking simple open-ended questions, you can say something like, what are some ways I can practically support you? What are some real needs that you have? And if they don't have an answer because brain fog or because of pain or they just can't think straight that day, You don't have to have the answer that day, but let them know. If there arises any practical needs that I can help you with, please let me know. I want to help.
Yeah.
Those are just a few things.
And two things that I told you earlier offline, the Irish setter, backyard squirrel. And so I just had a little bit of a squirrel. Well, two squirrels running across the yard. One is, have you ever seen the video, the nail in the forehead, the girl with the nail in the forehead? Oh, you got to Google that. Just Google nail in the forehead video, and you will appreciate it. And I think someone that and I use the word neurodiverse because I know you know what I'm talking about. But it's a great video that encapsulizes in a very graphic way, if you will, not gross graphic, but I'm like a visual learner, less of an audio learner. So the visual is very, very great. So Google
nail
in the forehead. But the other thing is, everything you just said, this is the one question that neurotypical folks ask, and it's one of the worst questions you can ask someone who is dealing with mental health issues, dealing with the fog, dealing with, I can't articulate, I know what I want to say, but I just can't get it articulated the right way. And we so often, we go, why did you do boom? Whatever it is. And we ask a why question, and that is more frustrating than I think people can imagine, because you're asking yourself the same thing and you can't. It's like, the scripture, why do I do the things I know I shouldn't do and don't do the things I should do? Well, if I had the answer to that, why, I could straighten my life out. That's the whole point, is my neurodiversity, your wiring and my wiring are completely different for whatever reasons. And I don't understand why you're doing something. Well, what I don't realize is neither do you, many, many times. And you can't just, blame it on, well, I had a traumatic brain injury, that's why. Yeah, that doesn't help. So I think it's really important. What you were saying is those open-ended questions, that how can I help you? What do you need right now that I can get for you? And it could be groceries. I don't know. Or it could be, hey, I'm here to listen. And the last thing you want is me telling you what the answers are to your problems, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And married couples, or if you have daughters, it's like, if they come to you and go, Dad, and they're complaining about something, they just want you to listen. They don't want you to solve their problem. They just want somebody. You use the language. I did it in the intro. That people feel seen, understood, and less alone. And a lot of times that just involves those around you just being good listeners and offering the help. What can I do? And and never, I learned that I teach this to law enforcement. You're dealing with someone who is blind, and it's just instinctive for you to want to reach out and grab them by the arm, not grab, but help them. There's a step here, and you reach out, and that scares the crap out of them because they don't see it coming. We need to learn to ask, how can I help? So if you put yourself, and if I'm way off base here, and you go, you know what, I don't want to go that journey, that's fine. But put yourself, you're now sitting across from yourself, and you're the counselor 2 years from now, And what would you tell yourself right now that you really don't want to hear, but you need to hear it? And if that's out of bounds question, just tell me, hey, Pat, I'm not ready for that one. That's fine.
No, you're
but
good.
That's where my head's going.
Yeah. Can I answer myself from like a year ago?
Sure.
Yeah, because it's harder to get clarity on the present. It's easier to have clarity on the past. So I'll give that answer.
Okay.
For myself from a year ago. Oh man, can I get like a minute to think?
Yeah. No, I get it. It's kind of like the Christian song, "Dear Younger Me." You're so right. There's so much that you can look backwards and have greater clarity than forecasting and looking to the future.
Yeah. Here's what I would tell myself from a year ago. I would tell myself that loneliness is a part of chronic health issues and that it's bound to happen to some degree because no one knows what it's like to go through what you're going through. But you have the control and you have the option and you have the responsibility to let other people into what you're going through. And they might not respond well. They might do things that hurt you. They might talk about you behind your back in a way that really sucks, honestly. But you have the responsibility to choose people you trust, to let them know what you're going through, and to actively avoid all loneliness that you can mitigate. You have the responsibility to let others into what you're going through, to let them support you, to let them take care of you in the ways you actually need, to tell them where you need help and support. And in this deep time of near crisis for you, be involved in your community as much as you reasonably can and actively take steps towards healing and mental health.
Wow.
Because it was easy for me to...
Are you taking your own advice?
Yeah. I mean, it was and is easy for me to isolate. It's like something isolating happens. So this outside kind of isolation that I can't really control, post-concussion syndrome, or I can't go to the event that my friends are going to because of my symptoms, or just a bad day of symptoms, like really terrible day, have to cancel everything, stay inside, do nothing type thing. Mm-hmm. So there's that isolation that I can't control. But then there's isolation that says, you know what, I am a failure. This is like shame that comes with like, I must have caused this condition. I somehow am responsible for what I'm going through. And even in the case where people did, like for me, I headed a soccer ball. I chose to head the ball. I bear that responsibility. And I feel shame. Like the way I've been eating isn't perfect. I haven't found all the right supplements. I haven't done all the research. I haven't looked into every single book that could potentially help me. I haven't, fundraised and done every single treatment that's out there to try and heal me. Like I've done a lot, don't get me wrong, but this shame that weighs on me. And that shame leads to further isolation. And it's just a menacing cycle where I'm full of shame. I feel like I caused it. I feel like I deserve it, whether that's true or not. And then I isolate myself and I don't reach out to friends and I don't reach out for support and help and let others know what I'm going through. And I'm just sitting there in shame, and it leads to bad places.
Wow. Two thoughts come to mind. One is, and you cannot always just do this on under your own willpower or, suck it up, buttercup, kind of mindset, but that hope, I think, is a key principle or whatever. I can't think of the word I want to use, but to not lose hope is, I think, fundamental. And then I think for you and what I'm hearing you say, as opposed to, I'm going to paraphrase it, and I don't remember where this is at in scripture, but it's in there somewhere. It says, be still and know that I am God. And I think kind of what I'm hearing you aspiring to is that, I recognize I'm going to have really crappy days. And I'm not going to understand a lot of what's going on, but I think you used the word peace earlier, that, the peace that's beyond understanding is that ability to believe and actually execute being still. And do you do breath work?
I have. It's always been fruitful and good, and like I've noticed benefit, but it's not something I do every day.
Yeah, that's kind of what comes to mind when people go, "Well, what do you mean be still?" I can't shut my brain off, kind of deal. And I'm like, well, it's not necessarily that kind of, not that you go blank. And I'm not talking deep meditation, but to literally take a deep breath and just relax and know God is in control. I think takes a lot of that mental stress. Now, physical pain, and other kinds of side effects of your injury or other injuries. We have a friend right now. He's a retired DEA agent. Was a detective on my department when I was a prosecutor. Literally minding his own business. He and his wife walking across the street, and this just happened in the last couple of weeks. He got hit by an unmarked police car being driven by a police chief in a small town in Georgia, and he just came out of his coma in the last day or two, and they're talking 3 months in a hospital because of the cognitive damage that's done. And again, like it's like we don't know what the diagnosis. He's gone from just in the last 3 or 4 days being able to open his eyes and give a thumbs up, but he doesn't recognize his wife or his adult children, kind of deal. And that could be so frustrating, I think, that you have to have a way of calming yourself down. And whether that is through your own, willpower, so to speak, or it's having the right people being able to be there with you and go, hey, it's okay. And I think I think that's one of the hardest things for anybody to do, is to sit still and be with someone and not feel like you have to fill that silence with, it's awkward to sit still and be quiet and just be present, if you will.
I would argue that there's a beautiful component of just being there. When I tried to work at this summer camp, it was one I had worked at prior to my injury. I thought going back up there would being out in the woods and in creation and fishing and canoeing, and I thought it was going to be great. I thought it was going to be kind of restorative for my soul. I thought it was going to be this kind of escape that I was wanting at the time, where daily life was so frustrating. My symptoms were bad and I wanted to get out. I wanted to escape. I wanted to run away. And so I ran back to this boys camp up in northern Minnesota. I worked there a whole summer prior, and it was hard, but it was really good. And then I tried to work there again, and I only lasted a month. And after 1 month, I was in such a rough spot, physical, but also mental health wise, to where I didn't really feel like I could trust myself. And so I drove home immediately because I knew I had to. It got pretty bad. I won't go into detail, but it got pretty bad. And so I went home, called a mentor of mine, and he did something amazing where he just said, hey, we have a cottage in our backyard. You can stay here for a few weeks. It's yours. You're welcome. We'd love to have you and cook you meals and take care of you. And they were gone for most of it, but they gave me a place to stay. And another time I called that guy on a really rough day, and he said, come over here or I'll come to you. He was like, we're getting together. And what he did when I went over to his house was he gave me food and then just sat with me in a room. We both sat in kind of chairs that weren't like looking at each other, but they were kind of off into the distance. And we both just kind of stared at a wall for a couple hours, and we hardly talked, and he was just there. And that was one of the most beautiful expressions of love that someone's ever given me, because it's when you sit there with someone, you don't say anything. And this is assuming that the person doesn't want to talk, that they're just going through a really tough day. When you sit there and you meet someone where they're at and that they just don't want to talk, they don't know what's going on, they're confused, everything's hard, and you can just sit there with them subconsciously without words. You're saying, I love you. I'm here for you. I don't know, like, I can't solve your problems, but I'm going to be here for you no matter what. At least
Wow.
that's the message I received. And so that's what I try and do. If someone's in a really tough time, I just try to talk as little as possible and listen. And if they don't want to talk, I'll sit there in the silence. And it's quite therapeutic.
Wow. What advice would you give someone who is suffering from, chronic pain or, chronic conditions, mental health issues, that they are legitimately unable or afraid to ask for help? What's your advice to that person? What's your advice?
I mean, there's a few different things I would say. I have a whole chapter on it in the book where I discuss my top 9 recommendations for people that are going through really tough times. And fellow chronic pain warriors is who it's addressed to. And it's just my lived experience advice. But one thing, kind of based on what you were saying, is to courageously take the next right step. Oftentimes we can't see 2 or 3 steps in front of us. And we might want to say, like, we can recognize that, like, I could recognize that my relationships are not in a good spot. Mental health is in a bad spot, that my physical health is terrible, that I don't know what to do with myself every day, and I'm miserable. I could recognize those things. And I could recognize that I wanted to get to a place where physical health was great. I wanted to get to a place where mental health was great. I wanted to get to a place where I had great relationships. I wanted to get to a place where I was comfortable every day. And I could see kind of like the 7 steps ahead. But oftentimes we can't, like, we try and take these jumps that are unrealistic and grasp at straws and try to just desperately cling to what the 5-6 steps down the road would be. So my advice is to courageously take the next right step, which is 1 step ahead of you. So, is it reaching out to a friend to apologize for something you said and trying to get together again?
Mm-hmm.
Is it trying to put one healthy habit, one healthy, like, diet protocol into your life? Just one little thing that week. Maybe eat a salad before every dinner. Something small, something attainable, something that you can take a step into and realistically do. Is it maybe scheduling a consultation with a therapist and exploring what that might look like for you? Is it meeting with a pastor or a trusted mentor to talk about what you're going through and scheduling something? I mean, a next right step could be simply sending 1 text saying, hey, can we get together?
Yeah.
I always encourage people, have a short-term mindset. Think about what I can do today, not necessarily the results you want to achieve, but look at those and then back trace them to what's 1 step I can take towards that goal today. And I think healthy habits are the key to long-term success overall, but also that very much applies for health issues where every day is really hard and you're up against a lot of challenges. And so it's way easier if you have habits built in to get up at a certain time and go to bed at a certain time, to eat. I eat a salad before lunch and dinner. I have a pretty strict diet regimen, but it's easy for me because it feels like habit now. It took a while to build it. It was hard, but it feels like habit now.
Yeah.
I regularly reach out to friends and family to get together, to share in fellowship and conversation. And that was a habit too, because for a while I was isolating and pretending that I didn't need anyone else.
Yeah.
So I think that's my biggest thing, is take the next right step, baby steps, one after another, after another, after another. Whatever you can do today, do it, and be intentional with it.
Wow. This is going to sound like it's completely out of left field, but what you just described, and I recommend you get this book, and I recommend it to the audience. And I don't know the author personally, but he'd probably say to me, how in the world did you make this connection? There's a great book. It's by Chris Voss, and it's called Never Split the Difference. and he was the lead international hostage negotiation expert for the FBI. So if an American was kidnapped in the Philippines, they called Chris in, and he wrote this book called Never Split the Difference. And what I hear, he has 4 real basic principles, but I want to just, what you just said ties into 3 things that he wrote about in hostage negotiations. 1, put your ego aside. 2, put your judgmental attitude aside. And 3, be realistic in the ask of the person you're negotiating with. And it's almost like for you, struggling with this is you're a hostage to your mental and physical circumstances, and that what you just shared about little incremental steps is put your ego aside, quit blaming yourself, quit, that judgmental, if only I had done, but that's the past. You can't change it. And it's not your fault. So put the ego aside and then focus on what do you want and what do you need? And how can I do that realistically? What you're saying, those small baby steps. And it's the same thing. It literally is like having a child that wants to be a toddler. They want to start walking. They have to do it incrementally and in small steps until they get the physical strength, they get the coordinate, all those things, and they take literally baby steps. They don't take off running. And that's what I hear you saying is a very practical advice that we all can use, whether we are suffering chronic pain or not, is if we had that kind of mindset, we could probably accomplish a lot more than we ever thought was possible.
Yeah.
So
and I would say too that I had this perception that I was going to be on a linear healing track where I was going to start here and work my way up to here. And it was going to be every day just a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better. And that can be how it happens for some conditions and some people. But that's not a guarantee at all. And for me, I would really try something and it maybe had a little bit of a result, and then it would drop off and I'd get even worse than before I started. And I was like, what in the world? And it was so disorienting and so like it just made me feel like a failure, like I was alone and like there was no hope for real help. And so I want to say again, with the short-term mentality, that every day my start line, say I'm about to run a race for that day, my start line moves. And my start line might be like, I might start in car number 20. I might start in rank 20 tomorrow. And today I start in rank 4. Like where I start each day can move. And so if I get better, then again, that's my start line for the day. I'm going to do one thing just to help make myself a little bit better. And if I get worse, then I'm back here. And that's okay. Doesn't mean I'm a failure. It just happens. There are so many things with the human body that are absolutely outside of my control. There are things that I can control, and I try to optimize that as much as I can. Sleep, hydration, diet, social relationships, novel experiences. There's so many things that I try and do, and I want to do everything I can in my control. But the human brain and the human body are so intricately complicated that we know so little about the brain and the central nervous system, that if there are things that I guess have compassion on yourself and have patience with yourself wherever you are. And start there. So again, drop the ego, drop the pride. I don't deserve to be better than I am necessarily or whatever. I am just going to accept where I am at each day and do what I can to make it a little bit better.
Yeah. And drop the ego and the attitude, increase the gratitude. I think that, and somebody wrote a book years ago, The Power of Positive Thinking. We're talking way beyond positive thinking. We're talking that fundamental basic concept of being thankful. And again, it comes back to scripture, be thankful in all things. It's like, how can you be thankful when your kid dies? Well, you can, but in you have to go through it to understand what you can be grateful for. That doesn't take you down that rabbit hole of despair and disconnect.
Yeah.
So I know I've asked a lot of questions, and I don't know that. Is there something like you were like, man, I wish Pat would have asked me this? Is there something you would, some final thoughts that you'd want to share that I didn't touch on?
I want to reaffirm what you said about gratitude, because in my book, I have a whole section on count your blessings, right? And it is a courageous act. It is not easy. It is not natural. It is something you have to choose to do and intentionally sit down and write a list of 3 things I'm grateful for today, and continue to do that over and over again. Is so hard. Like it's a tremendous challenge, but it's also beautiful because you're seeing the blessings, but you're seeing it from your own eyes when you look back on those and reread it. So like the little moments, the one comment that someone said to you that made your day, you can write that and be grateful for it and remember it, and it'll help you to overall just be a more grateful, patient, and accepting person. And I would be quick to talk down about gratitude and say it's a waste of time and yada yada yada, and then I did it and it has been so fruitful.
Wow.
So I want to affirm that.
How can people reach out to you? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, could I share just a few passages from scripture that have been greatly encouraging to me?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I think I'm going to roughly paraphrase, and I can't tell you exactly where all of them are, but they're in there.
All right.
So one passage says, God works together all things for the good of those who love him. And that is encouraging to me because it shows me that even when I can't see any good of this situation or life in general, and I don't want to continue on, and the pain is so bad that I feel so alone, God can work it for good, and I don't have to see it. I'm not guaranteed that, and I don't have to see it. Another passage is from, I think, both the end of Job and the end of Ecclesiastes. So this is after Job has been through a tremendous trial, after his friends have accused him of causing his suffering, which God rebuked them for. So Job did not cause his own suffering. And I think right at the end, when Job is repenting after God rebukes him for his pride and his ego and thinking himself so holy in the presence of God, Job essentially says, at the end of all things, fear God and fear the Lord and keep his commandments.
Yeah.
And I think the fear of the Lord is often misunderstood. It could be softened to the level of have respect for God or think highly of God. And it can be increased to this level of God will kill you right now, do obey or die, basically. And it's neither of those. It's somewhere in the middle where we ought to actually have fear for God because he is holy, and he is a creator. We are the created. He is the sovereign Lord of heaven's armies over all creation. He can cause nations to rise and fall, and he is Lord over each of our lives. But at the same time, he is full of steadfast and abounding love, and he is grace upon grace, the giver of good gifts, seeing everything in us, counting the hairs on our heads, creating us in his image, and blessing us with the grace that we have in him and his provision, and in Christ Jesus, who died on our behalf.
Yeah. God never made a promise that he hasn't kept.
Mm-hmm. He is faithful.
Yeah.
Truly, truly faithful.
I loved you talk about Ecclesiastes because most people, when they read it, they all latch on to, Bain. Vanity of vanities and everything. When actually Ecclesiastes is 3 different observations, and it's the end, the Song of Songs. Solomon and reading that and Job. I love Job. I love Ecclesiastes, and I also love Philippians. That's one of my favorite chapters in the Bible. Man, so good to have you on the show and to have this very open, frank conversation, because it's so often is a lot of people feel and think a lot of things about disabilities, whether they have it themselves or they know someone with a disability, and they're just afraid to have the conversation about what they're thinking, what they're feeling, frustrating, or even, you know, the good stories and outcomes. So I really appreciate you, Davis, for being open and honest and sharing things that work and don't work. How can people reach out to you to learn more from you, to get your book, or maybe even, hey, they've gone through some stuff and have some really positive things they'd like to share with you that have worked for them?
Yeah, I would love to hear from any listener. The landing page is www.chronicpainwarrior.com. That will have links to purchase the book, a contact form, and additional resources for anyone that could use them. The one resource that I just put out last week is 10 tips for doctor appointments. So it's just 10 tips on getting the most from every doctor appointment, making sure that you're not dismissed. One of the tips is bring a friend with you that knows your story. Just trying to mitigate medical dismissal and maximize that time as much as possible. So that's a free resource on the website, chronicpainwarrior.com.
Awesome. Man, this is a good you know what? I'm going to be honest with you. I was kind of sweating this before we went on the air, because I'm like, man, I don't want to, you know, step in something or on something, you know, kind of thing. But you've made it so easy to talk about your life and what that involves, and to, I don't know what's the word, young people, you know, authentic. You don't want. I'm Irish. If we can't dazzle you with brilliance, we'll baffle you with bull. You know what? That your openness is just so refreshing. So any last words? I mean, I'm just otherwise I'm just gonna, you know, babble.
I just hope the book helps. I wrote it. I meticulously wrote and edited it to be as short as possible while providing as much impact as possible to try and save people time. I don't like books that go on and make about 2 points in the entire book. So I tried to make it thick and dense and helpful as much as I can. Again, open to feedback. And Pat, it's been a pleasure to be here with you today. I've really appreciated your questions and diving in and all the rabbit trails, and it's been a lot of fun. So thank you for having me.
All right. Awesome. Hey, for our listeners, if this episode has impacted you, and you know someone that needs to hear Davis's message, and please don't hesitate. Share this episode with others, because as a warrior, servant, and a leader, it is our obligation, our responsibility to always strive to do the right thing at the right time, the right way, and for the right reasons. And don't be Kermit the Frog sipping that Lipton tea going, it's none of my business. Stand up, show up, rise up, and go out there and be a warrior, servant, and leader every day, every time. We love you all. Follow us on all the social media platforms. And especially Warrior Servant Leader Podcast.com is our landing site, and all things Warrior Servant Leader are there, including our books and other resources. So love you all, and see you next week.